Oh, they really did not know who they were dealing with. Did they? I am looking at what came out in this reading, and I genuinely had to stop for a second because what is sitting here on this table is one of my favorite things to witness in this work. One of the genuinely satisfying configurations, the kind that does not come through every day. The reveal, not the dramatic public kind, not the confrontation scene that people script in their heads when they have been underestimated, something quieter than that and more permanent. The kind of reveal that happens when reality simply catches up to the assumptions someone made about you, and the gap between what they assumed and what you actually are becomes impossible to sustain any further. That gap is closing, Virgo. And I want to walk you through exactly what I am seeing because the details of this are too specific to rush. But first, a moment for this community because they have earned it. I want to say something to the people who come here, not just for readings, but for the specific experience of being taken seriously, of having the thing they are living through treated as real and worth examining rather than minimized or redirected into something more comfortable. You deserve that. Accurate attention is one of the most respectful things one person can offer another, and I try to bring it every single time. Thank you for bringing your real situations here. Thank you for the comments that say, "This is exactly my life right now, and I did not know how to explain it until this reading found the words." Those comments are the reason I keep going deeper rather than staying safe. And welcome, genuinely, to whoever just found this space today. You picked a good one to start with. Now let me get back to what I was looking at because it is genuinely delicious and I want to give it the full treatment it deserves. There is something almost architectural about how this misreading happened, and I want to start there at the construction of the mistake rather than jumping immediately to the consequences of it. Because understanding how someone arrives at a wrong conclusion about you is more interesting and more useful than simply celebrating the fact that they were wrong. The assumption was built from incomplete materials. What this person saw when they looked at you in the early period of whatever this connection was or is or was attempting to be was a particular surface. And that surface, I will be honest, is genuinely disarming. There is a quality to your presentation, Virgo, a warmth, an openness, a willingness to be kind, even in situations that do not necessarily demand kindness from you, that produces a particular impression on certain kinds of people. On the right kind of person, that impression is received accurately. It is understood as what it is: generosity, genuine warmth, the specific grace of someone who has enough internal security that they do not need to perform hardness to feel safe. But on a certain other kind of person, the kind who reads the world primarily through the lens of hierarchy and leverage, and who is always somewhere beneath social pleasantries, assessing where power lives in any given dynamic. That same warmth reads as something else entirely. It reads as softness in the wrong sense, as the particular vulnerability of someone who can be managed, who can be handled, who will not push back hard or hold a line firmly or notice until it is too late, the slow repositioning happening right in front of them. That was the assumption. And it was wrong in almost every direction it could be wrong. Let me tell you what they missed when they made that assessment. The first thing they missed is so fundamental that I almost want to laugh, except that what it cost you to be underestimated this way is not actually funny, and I want to honor that. They missed the mind. Not in the abstract, complimentary, "oh, you are so intelligent" sense. In the specific, operational, this person has been watching and categorizing and building an accurate internal model of this situation since the very first interaction sense. You are an observer, Virgo, a genuine one, the kind that does not announce itself, the kind that can be fully present in a conversation, warm and engaged, and apparently absorbed in the social surface of the exchange, while simultaneously running a parallel and entirely private process of noticing, filing, connecting things that were said weeks apart, registering inconsistencies that most people would let slide because the inconsistency is small enough and the social pressure to maintain the pleasant surface is large enough. You let very little slide. You simply do not make a production of the catching. And that specifically, that the gap between what you notice and what you reveal that you have noticed is the thing that this person failed to account for in their original assessment of who they were dealing with. They saw the warmth and concluded there was no strategy behind it. They saw the grace and concluded there was no steel underneath it. They saw the face and missed the mind entirely. Something is coming through about a specific moment, a particular exchange or interaction or situation where this became, for the first time, clearly visible to them, where the gap between their assumption and your reality suddenly, briefly showed itself. Let me sit with this for a second because I want to get the texture of it right before I describe it. Right. Okay. It was not a confrontation. I want to be clear about that because the word reveal sometimes implies a dramatic scene, and what I am picking up is considerably more understated than that. It was a moment where you said something or did something or responded to something in a way that was so precisely calibrated, so specifically accurate to what the actual situation required, that for a fraction of a second, the mask of ease that this person carries dropped. Not for long. They recovered quickly. People like this generally do. But in that fraction of a second, something passed across their face or through their demeanor that you probably noticed and filed away without drawing any attention to the fact that you had noticed. Something like recalculation. The specific microexpression of a person whose mental model of you has just been updated by data that does not fit the existing category. You caught it. You said nothing. And that, the catching combined with the saying nothing, is one of the most sophisticated things I see in this reading. Because the person who announces what they have noticed gives away the extent of their awareness. The person who quietly keeps it creates a different kind of advantage entirely. I want to talk about the cost of this because I think readings like this one sometimes focus so heavily on the vindication, on the satisfying arc of someone underestimating you and discovering their mistake, that they skip past what it actually felt like to be inside the underestimation while it was happening. And I do not want to skip past that with you. Being read as less than you are by someone whose reading of you matters, in whatever capacity this person matters, is not a neutral experience, even when you can see it happening. Even when some part of you recognized the misreading almost immediately and filed it accurately rather than absorbing it as truth, it still lands somewhere. There is a specific low-grade indignity to being handled, to sensing that someone has slotted you into a category that does not fit and is proceeding to interact with the category rather than with you, to knowing that the version of you they are responding to is a diminished version, a projection of their own assumptions, and that correcting the projection would require either performing a kind of hardness that is not natural to you or accepting the misreading in silence. Most of the time, you chose the silence. Not because you did not know, because you understood with that sharp mind they missed entirely that the moment to correct the record was not theirs to set. It was yours, and you were waiting for the right one. Does this feel like something that has been building in your life with a specific person or situation? That particular quality of knowing you have been underread, sitting with it quietly, waiting for something without being entirely sure what you are waiting for. Tell me in the comments, tell me what the misreading looked like in your specific situation. I want to know the shape of it. Let me tell you what is happening on their side of this right now, because the reading is showing me something about their current internal state that is worth understanding. The recalculation that began in that moment I described earlier has been continuing quietly, possibly without their full conscious awareness of the process, but continuing. Each subsequent interaction with you, each exchange that produces data that does not fit the original category, has been adding to a growing weight of evidence that something about their initial read was fundamentally off. And what I find genuinely fascinating about this, from a purely observational standpoint, is the specific discomfort this produces in a person who built an entire relational strategy on an incorrect foundation. Because it is not simply a matter of updating information the way you might update a fact you had wrong. The strategy was built on the misread. Decisions were made from it. Moves were executed based on it. Which means that correcting the misread does not just change the information, it retroactively changes the meaning of everything that was done based on the incorrect information. That is uncomfortable in a way that goes considerably beyond simple embarrassment. It is the specific discomfort of someone realizing that the game they thought they were playing had a different opponent than the one they prepared for. And they are sitting in that realization right now. Not comfortably. I want to say something about power here because the reading is pulling me toward it, and I think it needs to be named directly. There is a specific kind of power that does not announce itself. It does not perform. It does not need to demonstrate its existence through visible dominance or the kind of assertiveness that requires an audience to witness it. It is comfortable in its own existence, regardless of whether anyone around it has correctly assessed its presence. That is the kind of power you carry, Virgo. And it is, paradoxically, the kind most likely to be underestimated by people who understand power primarily through its more obvious performances, who equate visible sharpness with actual capability and visible softness with its absence. What they do not understand, and what this situation is in the process of teaching them at some personal cost, is that power that does not need to perform is more durable than power that does. It does not require constant maintenance. It does not depend on other people's recognition of it to remain real. It simply exists, operating continuously beneath the surface of a presentation that gives nothing away until the moment circumstances make it visible. That moment is arriving, not as a performance on your part, not as a deliberate revelation staged for effect, simply as the inevitable consequence of reality catching up to assumption. There is something else here that I do not want to skip over because I think it is actually the most personally relevant part of this reading for a lot of you. The question of what you do now, because there is a version of this kind of vindication that becomes its own trap, where the pleasure of being correctly seen, finally, after a period of being underestimated, becomes a kind of attachment to the seeing itself, where the validation of having your depth recognized becomes something you start to need to orient around, to measure subsequent interactions against. And I want to name that possibility specifically because the energy around it is present and worth examining. Your value was not created by their misreading of it. It existed before they arrived at an incorrect assessment, and it will exist after they have completed their recalculation. It does not depend on them finally seeing it accurately any more than it depended on them having seen it accurately all along. The recalibration happening on their end is about them, not about you. It is a correction in their understanding. Your actual reality has remained constant throughout. What I am suggesting is this: let their correction be information. Let it be confirmation of something you already knew. Let it be, if it is satisfying, satisfying. You are allowed that, but do not let it become the thing that defines the value of this period in your story. Because the most powerful thing in this reading is not the moment they realize they were wrong about you. It is the months or weeks or however long it was that you moved through being underestimated without either shrinking into the misread or needing to loudly correct it. That equanimity, that quiet, self-possessed continuity of simply being who you are regardless of who around you has managed to accurately perceive it, that is the thing worth carrying forward. Not as armor, not as the hardness that this situation might seem to justify developing, as evidence, private, permanent, entirely your own evidence that you are not someone who requires accurate external assessment in order to remain intact. You were whole before they understood that. You remained whole while they did not. You will be whole long after the understanding has settled into its correct and permanent place in their mind. Let me close with something that came through at the very end, and that I think is the right note to leave this on. The face that disarmed them, the warmth that they misread as the whole picture. I want you to know something about that quality. The specific, genuine, unperformed warmth that made someone think they were dealing with softness when they were actually dealing with you. Do not harden it. I know that might seem counterintuitive given everything this reading has examined. It might seem like the logical conclusion of being underestimated for your warmth is to lead differently, to let the sharpness show earlier, to give people less opportunity to make the mistake. But that warmth is not a liability that happened to coexist with a sharp mind. It is the most sophisticated thing about you. Because moving through the world with genuine warmth while carrying genuine depth, while noticing everything and revealing only what you choose, while holding the steel entirely out of sight until the moment it is specifically required. That combination is not something that can be faked. It cannot be strategized into existence. It cannot be performed consistently enough to become real. It is in nature, yours specifically, and the people worth having in your life will not mistake it. They will recognize from the very beginning or close enough to it that the warmth and the sharpness are not contradictions. They are the same thing, expressed from the same source by someone who has always known exactly who they are. Even when the person standing across from them very much did not. One more thing before I go. If someone came to mind during this reading, a specific face attached to the specific mistake this reading described, I want you to notice something. Notice that you are not angry, or if anger is present, notice what is underneath it. Because what I am seeing in your field as we close is not the hot reactive energy of someone who has been wronged and wants acknowledgement of the wrong. It is something cooler than that, more settled. The quiet, almost amused recognition of someone watching a long game finally reach its inevitable conclusion. You knew how this ended. You always knew. That is not arrogance. That is the sharp mind they missed. Working, as it always has been, exactly the way it was always meant to.